So that way you can go back and understand what I'm emphasizing on different levels. But we'll just kick it off from here. Feel free to use the chat, ask questions along the way. We'll have time for questions midway through, but just want to really dive into this so you can get going on your work immediately after this. So with this module 1 is covering chapters 1 and 2 of the text. Because you have the pre-assessment this week, I'm not quizzing you this week. So chapter 1 is built in with the assessment for module 2. So just take notes. Remember what we're talking about. 1, going to get quizzed on when it comes to module 2. Chapter 2, you're actually going to get quizzed on during the final module. The big reason I decided to split the chapter 2 quiz and combine it randomly with the chapter 13 quiz is it should be harmonious. When it comes to the conceptualization of events, what you are building should align in a good world with the outcome, with the evaluation. So that way, that final week of the course, we're actually going full circle and putting that quiz there. So for that's far out there, but this is what you're going to be building towards in that individual presentation or individual project. So just to head on over, let's get rolling. So in module 1, we talk about more than this, but the key for me, the key things that I view to be important are different career paths, understanding sport versus non-sport events, sport tourism, and kind of as importantly, sport tourism, the types of sporting events that are out there. So this is a big section. I want you to start thinking, what event or what type of event should I be doing for my individual project? Because it will fall under the sport tourism and type of sport and event sector. For chapter 2, stages of event planning, brainstorming and event management. That's what the poll is associated with this week. Purpose of the event, the SWOT analysis, which is imperative in communications and marketing and business management, that general, and operational planning. So just for a quick intro to sport management, sport competitions go all the way back to the Greek games, Panhellenic Games, 776 BC. As things have evolved over time, a big connector to the modern world of the sport industry is the way that England set up their club sports system, where the wealthy brought sports for the community. So raising above small competitions and community-based outings. This is where that club style was created, which is where you see the infrastructure of organizations such as the English Premier League in soccer. Translating to the United States, the MLB, NBA, other organizations like that. So England plays a key role into how sports was created. And going back to or transition that to the United States, thought it's kind of cool to know that harness racing was one of those original forms of competitive regulated sport in the country. And that's one of those sports that's kind of died out regionally, nationwide, which is kind of interesting. Thinking about revenues across sports, in the US alone, tops 21 billion. I think that is a skewed number. That's what the text says. But when you think about, and the reason I say it's skewed, there are basically 8 teams in Major League Baseball that top 21 billion in themselves. So that's the overall money that's really coming through over the league structure as a whole. Though the money behind the valuation of teams and developmental leagues and farm systems, that is hundreds of billions in overall money. And with that, sports is continuing to evolve. Esport, foot golf, sports for individuals with disabilities. There's new sports coming up every year, which is actually pretty exciting. But also we're seeing the counter of that with an amplified dropout rate in sports. So more of the contact sports, football, pretty obvious example out there. We're seeing big hits to youth sports. I mean, you think about the Jackson community alone, there's multiple teams that are at that division or like Division 5 as well as C level in the state that have dropped to 7-on-7 football. That's crazy to me, considering how big football is in terms of revenue in the national scale. But as things go on, more concerns for health, for the wellness of youth. Football is pretty high contact sport. So it'll be interesting to watch in the years ahead how these dropout rates will continue sport to sport. Thinking about different career paths, and this is where the poll kind of comes into play, but you can do everything from promotions to be an athletic director, marketing, community relations, sales, and those are jobs that are interchangeable with other industries. So while you could study sport management, you could get yourself into a job at a marketing firm that has nothing to do with sports. Also, you could get a job or you could have a background in communication and get a job in sports. So it's kind of cool that it's an interchangeable field that way. For skills, of course, having sport specific knowledge is important if you're getting into different sports. But at the end of the day, interpersonal and time management skills are imperative in the realm of sport management. So the adaptability, the crises that you have to manage day to day in different operations, being able to think on the fly, but also being a trusted leader on the team. So if you need something, you're going to get support of your colleagues and your volunteers to make modifications happen. Also, for those looking to really dive into sport management, technology skills are imperative. Now, and this is true for marketing. So while, a marketing degree and a sport management degree are awesome, what's that technical skill foundation? One big thing that we see is a dire need for people that like and have a background in data analytics. So if there's anything you can do for data assessment, for analytics, whether it's working at a community credit union as an intern or volunteering at a local high school to help with, assessing the time players are on the court, helping with rotations, doing statistical analysis. That is huge when it comes to evaluating marketing budgets, promotional spending, and then greater levels, as the industries go up and the role goes up in terms of decision making along the way. Feel free to use the chat for questions. Otherwise, I'm just going to ramble from here. All right. So then we have to understand the difference between sport events and non-sport events. So obviously, this is pretty obvious, but competition is key in the sporting realm and really varies based on different locations in the country of what sports are offered to what sport or to globally, where the revenues are, how accessible sports are, and that kind of pairs the youth system to different countries as well in the competitive space. Non-sport events, you will hear this terminology throughout the course. This is stuff that's related to sports, but it could be more of like a trade show, or if you collect sports cards, the venue that you go to sell those sports, more of a convention center, or trade show, actually. With that is a sporting event, but non-sport related and function based on the definition of the competitive nature. With that, you traditionally see very large scale events in this space, from filling of stadiums to huge conventions and conferences nationally. So it'll be interesting to see moving forward post-COVID era, what sticks in the virtual world, what has evolved to be a more hybrid type event, but what are those in-person sporting events going to look like? I mean, right now, state of Michigan, you can't have more than 1,000 people at Comerica Park for outdoor baseball events come April. How are different stadiums going to change with time? Or are, some going to go back to the traditional way? That's going to be a fascinating thing to watch in the years ahead. Now, there are 3 different kinds of sport tourism, really, that drives traffic around the country. And the first is the obvious one that we all think of when we think about the sporting world, and that's event sport tourism. So that's thinking more along the lines of, hey, I'm looking on Ticketmaster, StubHub. I want to go to a game tonight. I want to check out Michigan basketball during March Madness. That is sport tourism. go visit the wings at the LCA, sport tourism. Going to check out the Players Championship that was last week in golf, sport tourism. On the other level, and this might be where some of your individual projects go, is what we call active sport tourism. So that's where maybe you and some friends are looking for something to do this weekend, and you're going to head up to Crystal Mountain. See me on the slopes, actually. If you go up to Crystal Mountain, wave at me this weekend when I'm going down, and you're participating in skiing or snowboarding. Or weather's nice down here, golf courses. Actually, breaking news for all the golfers in the room, a lot of courses are opening tomorrow in Jackson. That is active sport tourism. Or you're traveling across the country to go surfing, mountain climbing, whatever it is. Active sport tourism. So that can be a sanctioned event, such as something like the Gus Macker, where you travel to Jackson to play 3-on-3 basketball, or something that you just head out to the golf course on your own, spend a couple dollars and hit around. Active sport tourism. The other layer is nostalgia sport tourism. So this, when you think about visiting a sport hall of fame, I don't think we have many, if any, in the state of Michigan. But if you were to go visit Ford Field, they have different areas with, the halls representing former athletes. Having a behind the scenes tour of a Ford Field, that would be more of that nostalgia tourism. Or visiting a museum, visiting different places like that, or even going back to your hometown and supporting a local little league. That could be more of that nostalgic realm, even though that could blend in other elements of the sporting world. Thinking about now transitioning from just the pure element of sport to comparing that with facility management. Facilities are imperative to the success of a sporting event, a sporting league, and the whole sector. So often a facility could be an independent venue. So you think like where you may have played youth soccer, basketball, little league sports, those could have been what we call publicly owned facilities that are more community-based in nature, where those larger scale community competitions do take place. Or a 5K, that's without a doubt publicly owned facilities when you're utilizing the streets of the downtown area to host and to compete. A privately owned facility is more revenue centric in nature. So it could be like the example here, the Mamba Sports Academy could be a professional stadium, though some sports stadiums are publicly owned. I wanted to make sure you understand the difference. Just because it has a pro team there, that does not mean they are a privately owned facility. Some are private, some are public. Differentiation kind of comes with the management and ownership style of those venues across the nation. But with this, coordination is essential between the event teams, the marketing teams, promotional teams, and the facility to ensure a safe, fluid operation. We can really dive in deeper on this, but we will throughout the course. So then thinking about the different types of sports. Now, this is where it's also key to the type of event that we previously talked about when identifying what kind of event you want to host in your final project. So just to cover some different classifications, which will be important to identify right off the bat in that individual project, we'll go through some of the ones that the book introduces. Action and extreme sports, pretty obvious. X Games, BMX, snowboarding, a lot of the winter sports fall into that extreme sport category. Cross-cultural events, you're going to notice the Olympics are in a lot of these different sectors, but these are events where a big focus is blending different dynamics, backgrounds, countries, regions together in form of competition. Events for people with disabilities, one that everyone's heard of, or I'd assume, is the Special Olympics. But there's a lot of activities out there. The Michigan Victory Games to provide individuals with disabilities to compete on the main stage. That's there is a chapter of the Special Olympics in the Jackson area. They do on occasion some stuff at Withington Field, which is on Jackson High's campus, but this is something that, could be an interesting area to explore for that individual project. I'm not saying have 14 people go out there and do something on an event with people for disabilities, but if that's something that you think would be a fun challenge, a fun opportunity, and most importantly something to bring to the Jackson area, that's an area to consider. Family events as well. This is probably going to be where most of you fall for the final project. So Michaela, you're looking at this. This is actually randomly a snapshot of a Hanover Horton kid playing at the Gus Macker Festival from 2 years ago, but also 5Ks, soapbox derbies, family-based competitions that family can compete together or just be a part of the experience is, a very powerful level in terms of getting youth involved in the competitive world. Now, this one was kind of random in the text, but we have to understand the difference of fixed and non-fixed events as well. So if you are creating your project, it's probably going to be one of these, but a fixed event is something that always happens at the same place. The Kentucky Derby always happens at Churchill Downs. Okay, it's always going to be there. The Little League World Series, I forget the name of the town, I think Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, always there. Red Wings games, always at home. When they're at home, it's always at the LCA. So that's where, fixed is always the same spot. Non-fixed is the concept of the Final Four. It's always rotating around. AAU games are all over the place. It's not really home arena. The Gus Macker, there's different versions of that. The Super Bowl. So those non-fixed rotate, fixed, same spot all the time. International events, so going back to the Olympics, but also examples, the Tour de France brings in international competition, the Boston Marathon, PGA Tour, those all fall under that classification. Mega events, separating that from like the PGA Tour, mega events are more, I don't want to, that'd be insulting if I said destination worthy, but it is a festival in itself. So when you think about the Olympics, the FIFA World Championship, the Super Bowl kind of crosses that. Those are grand scale events that, might not even happen once a year or once a year at max. Multi-sport events go into the areas of different layers of competition taking place. Obvious, easy example, the Olympics. You have swimming competitions, you have basketball. That right there is a multi-sport event. Track and field, you have shot put, you have high jump, multi-sport event. Multi-location events, going back to the Olympics, you have games taking place in one town at an ice rink. You might be 40 miles north in the ski slopes for, the downhill skiing competitions and snowboard. So when you think about multi-location, this could happen in your project. Maybe you're utilizing the park in downtown Jackson and the fairgrounds, or the Ellis Sharp Park and the Cascades, or the fairgrounds, or something at the field house on campus and something on the disc golf course. So multi-location working with different spots at the same time. Senior events also could be consideration for your final project, have exploded in the past 5 years. So there are a lot more forums available for senior citizens or elderly adults that may have been, no offense to them, a little past their competitive prime. But that's, if you look around Jackson, if you go to the Ellis Sharp Park on any given Tuesday or Thursday in the summer, you will see no less than 80 people waiting to get on the pickleball courts. If you don't know what pickleball is, it's kind of like a tennis ping pong hybrid. I don't even know. That's the young lady with the green paddle in her hands playing some pickleball. But events like that have mega interest, especially in the south and warmer climates. Or the picture of the Tigers, that's their fantasy camp. So right around mid-July every year, the Tigers have this application-based process, and you actually get trained for competitive gameplay by former Tigers players to compete down in Lakeland. Pretty amazing, actually. Small-scale events. So this might be kind of a surprise to you, and I think it's open for interpretation on what's small versus large. But minor league sports, that's that smaller scale compared to a mega competition at the Little Caesars Arena. Local roller derby, for an example, the Gus Macker. I run it. I think it's a big event. we don't have more than 10,000 people. That's small in the area of sports. Anything high school related outside of a state championship, small scale event. And lastly, youth events. So going back to your individual project, this could be an easy one to play with. Thinking about developmental events, whether it's associated with a high school, a college, for more of like a summer camp type activity, AAU, competitive traveling sports, all that classify youth events. So really throwing a lot at you, but any questions on the first chapter? With what you just saw, there should be multiple elements that you're blending into that final project right off the bat by your submission on the 24th. When you're thinking about the construct of it, thinking about, we haven't really talked about target audience, but that as well. Any questions so far? Feel free to use the chat if you want to. Otherwise, if I don't see anyone typing, get rolling in about 10 seconds. And I'll keep this to 5 o'clock. That's my goal for the day. All right. Not seeing any text movement. We'll go from there. Now, chapter 2, talking about the planning that comes into play in the conceptualization stage of the event. Introduction to what's so stakeholders. It's very, 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 very important to know stakeholders in the first part of your project. They are the key people who's going to help you make this happen. Are you going to run it as a committee? Are you going to need sponsors? Are you going to need to plan out logistics? Who helps with the budget? If it's a small scale event, maybe you do a lot, but for the purpose of the project, we need to think larger than just a one person show. Stakeholders are key when it comes to that. Going to the stages of event planning, there are different stages you're going to be experiencing. Is basically how the final individual project's laid out. Let's think about the conceptualization. What are you trying to do? Who are the people that are going to help you run that? What's that early stage stuff that is really providing that mission that you're working towards? For operational planning, okay, let's take this crazy idea and try to turn it into a reality. What action items do we have to put forth? That's where the marketing budget and specific task management comes into play. Implementation takes that to the next level, and that's more of the execution stages. Yes, all right, budget's there, this is happening. Now, this is what we have to do in terms of staffing and contracts just to get things underway. Assessment, post-event is what you're going to be doing, hopefully throughout, to make sure you're on the right path. What do you have to change for the next year or the next week, whatever the situation is? But assessment is imperative to make this happen as well. Event leadership, simply strong leaders have to happen in that structure. And that's where we go into the diagram of different sectors of the sport management realm. So you see that there's, this is a very, very, very narrow view of an organization, probably like the Lansing Lugnuts in terms of size, how many staff members they would have with that organization running these different areas. But it's everything from public facing roles in sponsorship and PR to the back end facility management, hospitality relations. These intermix, regularly, but it's a way that trust and those strong leaders are needed. So you get the support that's needed as you progress and plan an event. For project management, specifically, this is where we have to identify the processes and kind of the skill sets needed to pull this event off. So when you're bringing an event to a community, what accountability do you have? What objectives are you setting 16 months out, 12 months out, a day before, during the event? It's important to define that and build upon that when it comes to the planning of those logistics and contingency plans if changes have to happen on the fly. When thinking about communication, I mean, this is pretty basic, but how are you going to communicate? Is it going to be via text? During events, are you going to have a impressive walkie-talkie system? Are you going to be educating beforehand or providing access on shared drives? Are there software that you can be utilizing to process ticket sales in advance? All this is important on the communication and planning angle up front. So then it comes to a purpose. Go into your final project again. So what's the point of this thing, right? So a few different areas you could go. Promoting an issue. So you see that there's many events out there for, I'm drawing a blank. Well, suicide awareness and the American Heart Association. Take a Step for Diabetes, different organizations like that. 5Ks are a great example that 5Ks are created to raise money for something. Going to Gus Macker, we're more on that fundraising for a cause. So with us, we're not the Gus Macker tournament. Oh my gosh, stop talking to me. Sorry, my watch. I'm not calling out a random person on my wrist. So with that, our funds go toward a cause, but it's not the Gus Macker tournament for diabetes awareness, right? So that's more of that. It's created, but it's for a greater cause, a greater purpose. Then we have different elements of driving tourism. This could be a big one for some of the projects, but the example on the picture, Paddle for Pints. A lot of breweries work together. A lot of people buy tickets in advance. This actually traditionally sells out in 12 to 24 hours annually, where you kayak brewery to brewery to brewery to explore the tastes and the sights of Traverse City, ultimately boosting the fill rate in their hotel rooms. So thinking about, what you can do to drive people to town, promoting an image. So the American Bowl hosted by the U.S. Army is, if you look at it deeper, it's more of the Army's contribution to society, sport, on and off the field. So kind of a unique route there for promoting image. Meeting sponsor objectives. This has to happen in that individual project. So you don't necessarily need a presenting sponsor like the Rose Bowl has in Capital One. And you think about, the Little Caesars Arena. I mean, the friggin' building is named after them. They're the presenting sponsor of the building. So it could be smaller level sponsorships, but making sure when it comes to planning these events, sponsors' needs have to be met along the way. And then the last one, promoting a sport. Is it an educational event? Are there other things happening to bring awareness to the sport, to the community? So the example here, a couple years ago, the Detroit Tigers and Kansas City Royals played the first ever professional sports game in the state of Nebraska to kick off the Little League World Series, or not the Little League World Series, to kick off the College World Series. So while people always go to the fixed event in Omaha for the College World Series, it was more of this promotional opportunity that brought, the MLB to the mix by having the Tigers and Royals in town. Understanding the needs of stakeholders in your individual project, you're going to be working with a range of these, not all of them, but a couple. So thinking about sponsors, whose names do you see on the court of different arenas? Or if you watch the Red Wings, you see the UWM on their helmet for United Wholesale Mortgage. Who are the sponsors? How are they interacting? Broadcast partners, who owns the right to work with the league, to work with the event, to work with the owner, the team, the whatever, to distribute and broadcast that information. So think about radio, TV, often public text and internet publications in different circumstances. Local community, who's the visitors bureau in town? When you think about downtown Detroit, District Detroit is embedded in a lot of the events and getting people out and about in Detroit compared to just walking in and out of that stadium to and from their car. Charitable causes, kind of already talked about that, and working with sport governing bodies. So MHSAA, AAU, organizations like this, we have to understand how those groups work when working with them in different events. When it comes to choosing an event for event managers, there are 4 key factors. Time. When's it happening? So think about the weather. Think about the availability of different places at that time. For money, is it about making a profit, or is it about just doing the right thing after you pay the bills? What kind of people do you need to contract, hire, get as volunteers? For facilities. Like I already said, it's not like you're hosting a Pistons game in Jackson. Well, I guess you could at the field house, but I mean, probably have better options than that. But what operations are there to create a grand event? For very, very, very critical things that you should start to identify in that first page of your individual project. Now, the SWOT analysis, I could spend a whole day on this in itself, but for this, you're going to have to run a SWOT on your business, and you're going to be running a SWOT on different businesses and activities or events in some of your assignments this week. In short, this is divided into two sections. Internally, what are the strengths and weaknesses of your business or your event? So internally, what are you good at? What are you struggling at? So what do you have to evaluate in advance and know that you have to overcome to make this happen? Externally, opportunities and threats. So when you think outward, is if this is the only event in the area, that's a great opportunity. Going back to Gus Macker, there isn't any other one in South Central or Southeastern Michigan. Opportunity. A threat would be, does this already exist? So if you're looking to bring a 5K to town, is there a 5K that weekend, the weekend before or after? Is that 5K with a fully established business, vendor, whatever it is? So think internally, strengths and weaknesses, and externally, those opportunities and threats that exist in the community, the sport, whatever it is. And we're going a little after 5. I apologize. So if you do have to bounce out, no worries. This will be loaded tomorrow as well on JetNet. But thinking about the development of a mission, imperative for nonprofits to stay mission centric, but also to small and large organizations. Why are you doing this? So make sure that you stay with that as you go throughout your planning. So you stick to the beliefs that you established when you created the whole thing. When it comes to goals and objectives that go along with that mission, something the text does not have, but I live by, is creating SMART objectives. So if you're taking notes or you want to take a screenshot, this is very important for the way that you should even list stuff on your resume, but you got to be specific when creating goals. You have to make sure the goals can be measured in terms of volume. Are they actionable? Do you have the resources to put on what that goal is? Are they result oriented? So similar to being measured by reading X amount, is that going to hit what you're at or what you're going for? And time specific as well. So an example of a SMART goal that you could set as an event manager or a student for that matter is you want to recruit 16 volunteers to support 2 4-hour shifts in the registration ticket sales area by May 1st, 2021. So if you're hosting an event that requires volunteers and you have to sell tickets, could be a sporting event at Jackson College, could be the Lugnuts, could be the Gus Macker event, whatever it is. We got to have measurable objectives to add a layer of accountability to this process. Whoops. All right. And then for planning logistics, similar to some of those other goals, what else is happening those days? So are there other events taking place in the community? So if you've ever been to downtown Detroit and went to a Tigers game on a home football Sunday for the Lions, that is a friggin' nightmare. So what's the impact on parking? What's the impact of travel? Can the game time be shifted based on the Lions game? So think about in that individual project and that group project even, what logistics have to be in play to make sure everything is in sync with an event. Going on in terms of creative thinking, this is something in event planning that makes a memorable event memorable. What are you blending in to enhance the experience for fans or guests? Are there some unique or nostalgic factors about the event that make people want to come back the next week, year, or whenever it happens? With that, by making that memorable experience, that's what makes it sustainable. So sustainable in terms of the longevity of the event, but also many fans nowadays create very, 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 very firm opinions on events based on the actual sustainability that's taken place. Are there recycling bins? Are straws made out of paper versus plastic? I mean, this is a whole new realm that we're seeing a direct impact on the viewpoint and engagement of fans that we didn't really see 8 to 10 years ago. So big thing to think about as an event planner. What are you doing to create a sustainable event experience? Not everyone cares, but it does make a big impression on the majority of fans these days. Thinking about promotions, what else could do to enhance the event, other partnerships, what could you do to experience the event for maybe ticket holders, stakeholders, whatever it is, big things to consider. Planning for contingencies, and I think I only have 3 slides left. So with this, what could go wrong? We as event planners have to think that a lot can go wrong at an event. Is that something that can be minimized with security? If there was an active shooter at an event, what do? I mean, we can't just be caught off guard with this. So think about these contingency or emergency plans when putting that event together. Now, an operation such as Comerica Park, there's a lot of people behind the scenes working to deliver these contingency plans, ranging from the emergency personnel that is at the event to the community safety managers that have manuals and transcripts for employees to understand based on what they need to do in these different situations. The PA address of the PA announcer has to be involved to share, this is what you have to do, blah, blah. Think about all these factors that come into play just in case something bad were to happen. What if it rains during your outdoor event? Got to have a contingency plan. What if the weather is upwards of 100 degrees? People are going to pass out, so think about that stuff as we go throughout this course as well. For operational planning, not going to read through all this, but at the end of the day, operational planning is what you're doing and what you're building accountability towards months, weeks, days, hours in advance and throughout the event. This is kind of what you're building towards, but I don't need it in that much detail for the individual project. But this is something to think about. The event you're pitching is for May 2022. What has to happen now? What has to happen next spring? What has to happen by the 4th of July? So start to think more advanced when it comes to putting this together. And lastly, something I want you to do in this course, and you will be doing in Module 5, or maybe Module 4, are identifying added risks, planning failures, blunders with different events. So what led to the failures of this? Disorganization, that really leads to failures of events because possibly a lack of communication, lack of focus. If you're doing different things, you're going to overlook stuff. So that's why it's very, very, very important to have a team of stakeholders involved or committees. So it's not you just doing everything on your own. Easy to overlook details that way. So with that, make sure you go through that. And I know there's a couple high schoolers in the class, and if you watch this, you didn't hear it from me because you might have to be probably 18 years old to watch this one. But there are documentaries out there about the Fire Festival. As an event planner, that was one of the most enjoying documentaries I've ever watched, just based on the catastrophic failure that came with it. So, if you do watch this, it's not part of the class, but might want to earmuff some brothers and sisters so they don't know the words coming off the TV. But one of the best freaking examples I have out there with the blunders and failures stemming from poor event management. Now, like I said, this is the longest presentation you're ever going to get from me, but do you want to open it up to questions? See if you have any comments, thoughts, concerns. This is a lot of stuff to go through.